Hang on, let's see. All right, so what I'm going to do, your mic's going to be hot. I'm going to put on a 1 minute and 20-second intro, so allow people to get in. We are live on Facebook now, and so that also give me time to share. All right, I'll be right back.
Cool, man.
Man, what is going on today? We're having a few little difficulties here, but every time we have difficulties, technically, we always have a great show. It's our 4th show of the day. Is the sound okay? Somebody said the sound was off. That worked. Somebody give me a heads up. Can y'all hear us? If somebody would be kind enough to let me know. Let's see who we got here. Anybody? Can you guys hear us? All right. Morgan's in the Zoom room. Let's see. Well, I think we're okay. Dan Regan. Dan Regan. Todd Medina, nice to meet you. We'll just have to get.
Too, right?
Yeah, sounds good. All right. So yeah, nice to meet you. We'll just have to get to know each other on the air, spontaneously, intuitively, creatively, imaginatively, and depending on what we're talking about, courageously. It's good to see you. I've seen you around for quite a while. I mean, I want to say probably 3-4 years. Easy. Yeah, you've been around. You've been in the game for a while, haven't you?
Been in the game for over a decade, but more so the last few years, becoming more visible and out there with my work. Yeah,
right on. And so, did you have a one of those successive traumatic, succession of traumas hit you, or car accident or major illness that woke you up?
Pretty gradual happening for me in my teens and 20s, that I kind of got to a stage where I was 29 and just living in this internal psychosis and place that I couldn't escape out of, and I didn't really know how to escape out of, except for pushing the limits more and more with myself and everyone around me. And made a big change when I was 29. I set and return and moved to Perth, actually, and to where I didn't know anyone, to kind of go about changing the game of how I was living my life and how I was showing up, and all the places where I needed to have a good look at myself. And that's been the journey from there, from 2008 till to this day.
Wow, so, 2008. So when did you figure out everything wasn't what it seemed to be, or what you were being told it was?
Probably a couple of years before that, probably 26, 27. I just started just believing that there was more to life than the way that I was actually living my life. Yeah. Yet I didn't get a clear pathway into that until I kind of shifted and made the move. And then from that space, everything just went boom, 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 as it does, and lays out in front of you.
Right on. So did you have any specific faces of the universe, like divine essences or angels or galactics popping in to kind of indoctrinate you?
Always, but through humans. I've had a very physical experience, through
Yeah.
a very practical physical experience, and through that way. And one of the main systems or teachings that I run with is the gene keys transmission. Have you had much involvement in that?
Richard Rudd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my main work in the world is being an ambassador for that wisdom at the moment, as it
Oh, cool.
kind of pulses out into the collective at a beautiful rapid rate. It's what I'm called to do more and speak about more as it expands out.
So you're like an ambassador for the Gene Keys.
Yeah.
So that's where you spend a lot of your energy and your focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Both personal.
Yeah, kind of like Marianne Williamson was with A Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, okay.
Something
Very
like
cool, because
yeah.
we've had people come on and they've referenced the Gene Keys, specific Gene Keys. Like I hear a lot about the 55th Gene Key, and I think the 35th Gene Key, which is the shortcut, through divine union or something like that. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit, if that's the gist of what you're doing. I mean, that would be, we've not had that in 1800 shows, somebody that could talk about it. I believe we reached out to Richard Rudd, but the guy's pretty busy, I would imagine. So
he's in demand, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine he's in demand. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I sent him out.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. There's a little bit of a lag. I'm not interrupting you. Go ahead.
Yeah, happy to bounce the keys or anything. There's some interesting transits around the keys at the moment, or the gates in human design that also, they're the same imprinting as the keys, but these archetypal frequency bands that we're surfing and swimming in as the collective are really interesting at the moment from a Gene Keys point of view. So we can go into that a bit later too.
Yeah, let's go into that. Let's get to know Dan the man first though. So you moved from, I guess, Sydney to Perth.
More around Canberra, but all up and down the east coast to Perth.
Okay.
In 2008.
Yeah, I know Perth's on the other. My wife's from South Australia, Adelaide. So
okay.
I know the geographies. All the cities are on the east coast, and then Perth's over here on the west coast. And so I figured. So you moved all the way across to kind of, you weren't running, to kind of just rebirth, I guess.
Rebirth, yeah. I was on a pretty self-destructive path back home with some of the habits and the way I was getting about the place. But I just felt that I needed to get away from everything that I was to kind of look into how I was going to deconstruct or the feeling of anxiety was a big one for me through my teens, but also through my 20s, that I was numbing out very effectively with substances. And then as I got to Perth and as I started, the process of inquiry started meeting more and more of these waves that wanted to be felt that hadn't been felt. And it's an ongoing journey, obviously, but it's all the resources kind of have assisted me in taking pretty extreme dives into certain things and retreats for myself and that sort of thing. It's been a pretty rapid, intense journey at times.
Yeah, far out. Well, at least you snapped to it at 29. Some of us took, almost twice as long. So that's, you should be commended for that. Although I'm sure you lived it pretty hard. I can just tell by your frequency. You must have gone pretty deep. So other than the Gene Keys, I mean, like, what year did you discover the Gene Keys?
I got a human design reading back in 2010, 2011, and the Gene Keys came not long after that. So I've been in the transmission for 7-8 years.
So was there anything prior to the human design reading and the Gene Keys? Was there anything or things that were influential in your in your alignment?
Yeah, plenty. Have you heard of a guy called Michael DeMaco Rowland? He used to be. No. He was rolling with Ram Dass at one stage, but he brought these teachings from India to Perth and to Australia. I think he lived on the East Coast. I think he still lives on the East Coast.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got to Perth, it was funny because I was listening to the radio and I wasn't really tuned into the intuition, spirit, and all this kind of stuff. But I kept on hearing this ad, and the ad was this guy saying, "Do you ever wonder why you've lived the stories you've lived?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm just cruising along. I was like, do you ever wonder why you keep playing out the same patterns? I was like, "Yeah." And then I went along to this open night, and it was the first thing I'd been to anything personal development or anything, so I felt really awkward. But I went to this thing, and he started talking about meditation and the subconscious mind and all this stuff, and I was like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. So I signed up for this weekend retreat and got meditating and started doing all the things, and yeah, it sort of led me into like Reiki healing and all the things. But it just seemed to be one thing after another, and I'd have these magical humans that kept on landing in my realm that were just there to assist me in that next step. And so it was it's been a pretty synchronistic, magical ride for sure.
Wow. So, and at that point you didn't really have a relationship with your intuition or whatever you want to call it. Did that develop later?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And then when I look back, I did, but I just didn't know what that was. Like even the thing, I've got to move to Perth. I had no idea why, but I just had that click, but I wouldn't have called that an intuition back in the day. But yeah.
Did you go through what a lot of people that come on the show did, which was like estrangement from your family, being called crazy and, wanting to commit you or arrest you or stuff like that?
No, not that drastic. Although there were probably some concerns there for my well-being in my 20s. But I did go through a very difficult transition. That it was a continuous transition of letting go of some of the people in my life that I because I was changing and because I was having to go through what I was going through, I left a lot of people behind, and a lot of really good people and good mates and ones that I haven't really connected back in with, but trusting the divine timing and all that sort of stuff. But that's probably, when you say that, that's one of the first things that comes up, is who I had to kind of leave behind to just focus on myself and really go inwards and sort myself out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now you say very organic, very physical, not a whole lot of galactic, angelic, divine essences type of thing. What about the Mother Earth? Australia's a huge landmass. Of course, there's a huge Aboriginal influence there. Elementals, animals, anything like that?
Yeah. There's been a lot, and don't get me wrong, there has been very galactic, a very galactic flavor to my evolution.
Okay.
But one that I don't often share my own personal retreats and journeys with, apart from a few that I've written about, that I've shared. But there's definitely been a galactic piece in there, and always looking for that constant connection to spirit, because I find that in my role, that in the flows that life takes me on, I sometimes I'll be somewhere for a couple of months, and then I'll kind of lose connection to the source in a way, and I'll go into retreat and I'll get that back, and it'll put the wind in the sails and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So you end up doing this human design around 2010. Shortly thereafter, Gene Keys come in. When did you start becoming, I don't know what you call yourself, an energy worker or a teacher or something to that effect?
Yeah, I've actually gone back to the name empowerment coach now, because I resisted coach for years, and I called myself a mentor and all the other things, because there was resistance around that coach. But now I'm rolling with the name empowerment coach, because that's the best description of what I do with people, is help them empower themselves by exploring some of the shadow aspects, or a lot of the shadow aspects of life that can be there. And it's where all our gifts lay in waiting, which is the whole Gene Keys work, really. But it's a big part of my work.
That was my next question. was so I didn't know that, and I agree. You know, I'm married to a shadow eater. It's been working on shadows for 20 years.
Yeah.
Very powerful practitioner, my wife.
Mm.
But I didn't know that the gene keys worked with the shadow. Is that
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah, for sure. It's really deep, acute shadow work. It's like when you're looking at your, have you seen your gene keys hologenetic profile?
No, no.
Okay. Well, you've got basically a profile that's, so there's 26 imprints in human design. So there's 26 imprints that are each side of the body graph, and then 11 of those imprints, because they're based on the same imprinting but very different system, they get transferred over and they make up your gene keys hologenetic profile, which is 11 spheres, 11 different gene keys in different areas of your life that govern different areas of your life.
Okay.
And every gene key or genetic archetype has a shadow frequency, a
Okay.
gift frequency, and a siddhi frequency. So it's got 3 frequency bands in each archetype. And the archetypes are based on the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, which is obviously 5,000-year-old ancient wisdom that's rocked up at this exact time in humanity's evolution, because the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching maps the 64 codons in our DNA. So it's literally a reprogramming language for our genetic code. But when you're looking at your hologenetic profile, you basically get to see what your themes are that you're here to play this lifetime. It's like what your gifts are and what all of the shadow patterns that have to be moved through in order to really embody those gifts.
Okay. Because I got confused because I've heard human design or something to that, something similar. I thought it was called human design, where there was like 5, 6, or 7 different categories. But you're saying that this particular one has 26 and 11. So I guess what do? You fill out some kind of form or answer some questions, and then 11 are identified, or is it based on numerology or astrology or what?
Okay, so I'll basically anyone can go onto genekeys.com and download the free profile, and it's basically your birth time. So it's your birth time and where you were on the planet, because it's planetary, but it's very archetypal.
So it's like a natal, the information you give on a natal chart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Now, did Richard Rudd download these? How many gene keys is there? 70 or 60 something?
64.
64. That's right. So did he download the information, the data?
Well, he's had a very explorative spiritual background the past 30 years and done a lot of things, but he was a student of human design under Ra Uruhu, which was the first transmission holder of that wisdom. And he went back to the UK and he began writing books, and so he's got books around human design and all that. And then the Gene Keys transmission started coming through in early 2000s, 2001, and there was a transit. Venus came in front of the sun and gave us this download, which it was effectively the Venus transmission, which is the heart of the Gene Keys work and the sequences. And it's basically a wound map. So it's got all of our shadow patterns and how they were ingrained into being in those first 3 7-year cycles of our lives, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And so when you activate this transmission in your life, you anchor the activation sequence, which is physical, and then you go into the emotional plane and you're going back into the childhood to start resolving some of the things that are still locked down in the cells and the DNA.
Okay. So he started transmitting that later after he wrote some books. Does he attribute it to higher self, the universe, any specific energy complex, or
it can be a pretty etheric teaching, the Gene Keys, especially when you come across the 22nd Gene Key and some of the Gene Keys like that. But it's a very grounded wisdom. It's okay. Here's our shadows, and here's the repressive and the reactive nature of these shadows, and we really need to cultivate and ground down into these realms in order to really embody the higher frequencies and work in that way. Yeah.
And does the gene keys have a process or a modality to release and integrate or transform these shadows?
Yeah, yeah, and just it goes sequentially, but basically it's all about getting someone to get their Gene Keys profile and then start having a read of the Gene Keys books like this. It's a big book, but it's only one that you read the introduction and then you go to your specific Gene Keys because they're the keys for your genes to unlock and activate these memory codes that are dormant, and they're actually designed to be activated through the transmission. And so you start to read your keys and you start to become more acquainted with the shadow. And as people become more acquainted to the shadow, it's like we can start embracing the shadow more, because the shadow's down here and out there because it's uncomfortable. We don't want to feel it, and we don't know what it is. But this gives us an exact languaging around what our actual shadows are and where they govern our lives, and where our awareness can penetrate them, and to penetrate deeper and deeper into our psyches, and what the ego won't let us see.
So what you're saying is that the Gene Keys is a transmitted and then converted and intended code, basically, that is represented in this book. And basically, when a person goes to the book, they take the assessment or whatever it is, and then they're working through the book based on what they've been those 11 that they've been identified with. And just by reading this coded, the coded transmission in these words, in and of itself, begins to immediately bring some more alignment and expansion.
Yeah, definitely, and more understanding of self. And when someone starts to, and it takes a little bit of penetration to actually penetrate the transmission, which is where a lot of people miss the magic. So they'll pick up the Gene Keys book and read a couple of Gene Keys, put the book down and go and do something else, which is cool. But if you want to really bring the magic alive, the life's work and evolution spheres are the first two spheres on the activation sequence. And that's where people are best going to penetrate, because it takes some perseverance to actually penetrate the transmission for it to come alive and catalyze in the person's life. But it's literally, it can be the way that, like, if you read a Gene Key a day, say, or just touch in on them regularly, you know, you could be driving along in the car, and you'll get an insight. It's like, oh, I read that there. And it's starting to thread into the consciousness, because you're starting to fill your consciousness up with this transmission, and it wants to come alive to really show you what's up in whatever whatever you're requiring.
And what do you mean by penetrate? To penetrate the idea, or especially those first two you're talking about. What do you mean by to penetrate? It takes a little bit to penetrate it.
To penetrate, as in, like, energetically focus in on those two archetypal themes, or the two archetypes, and with that persistence, something then penetrates it. It cracks in. And
so in other words, you keep focused on it until you feel it pop, until you'll feel it. In other words, you'll feel something break through. Oh, you're there.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
Got that. And it's like you'll either have if anyone does that, it's got to come alive, and it'll come alive through a huge breakthrough or a string of insights that feel like they've come from another realm, and it starts to land in that way.
So this is fascinating to me, because I had no idea the book was set up this way. It would have been a lot more appealing to me, or I'm not saying I'd have read it. I think my wife has a copy of it. But, and the reason for that is because every time I've heard it referenced, when I see it in post, or I've had people on the show, and they might say, we're in the 55th Gene Key now, you know? So I thought it was like some kind of map of our journey, but I guess there's some truth to that in terms of the individual, but the references I've seen, they've been citing it on more of a collective level. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, for sure. And part of that is true as well. It is a map for us. It's a map for us to. It's our evolution and our involution. So, but it's a map that it's basically a map out of our suffering. It's like we came here with wounds, we came here with shadows, and denying them or escaping them or avoiding them is kind of keeps us away from where we actually want to evolve to. So there's a beautiful languaging around that there definitely is a map in a sense, because it definitely gives people actual anchor points. It's like, okay, this is me. I've just got to keep on penetrating this. And they're literally wormholes. So you go down these wormholes, these archetypal wormholes, and they just continue to reveal more and more information over years and years and years. And even Richard, he's still a student of the transmission. He's the first transmission holder of the wisdom, very wise man, but he's not a guru. He's a family man, and he's had his own process within his keys and his archetypes. So he's given birth to the transmission, but he's still a student of it. And
and I would imagine if somebody went through the 11 and like I guess he's done, and then starts it over, that when you go through the second time, you're going to find things you didn't get the first time. Would that be true?
Yeah, and fourth and fifth and sixth time. It's crazy.
It never stops.
Never stops. It never stops. It gets more fascinating and more. Yeah. You just wouldn't want to stop.
Have you ever met Richard?
Yeah, a few times. We're a few times over the years, starting in 2015, where I started off with a brother called Mark Bentley over in Perth, and we started doing events over there in 2015, and endorsed by Richard, and he's looked after us and mentored us in a sense in that way.
Very cool. Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah, very cool. And he lives in UK.
He does, Devon in England. Yeah.
So, and I know I asked this before, but I'm not quite sure I got the understood it or whatever. So in the book, does it have processes or modalities to balance the shadow, to bring it into an equilibrium?
Yeah, and
it does.
It's through basically a lot of it is all ownership and accountability, and each archetype has kind of a different nuance or a different thing that the individual has to do, but it's mostly about getting acquainted with the shadow. Okay,
I got you. So it's kind of like, because if I think of a process, it's step A, step B, step C, but I get what you're saying. It's actually kind of in between the lines as you get acquainted with it, and the expansion comes from the awareness, and then the rabbit holes that it opens and all that stuff. I mean, like in your own experience, or maybe even of people that you've worked with, have they had any, or have you had any, like, you're going through one of the keys and you start to have these rabbit holes appearing, and like maybe say forgotten memories or stuff you blacked out, and can you have like a soul quake?
Yeah. I like soul quake. Yeah, definitely some soul quakes in there. And there's like there's pockets of memory trapped in the DNA as well. And then as we unlock these gene keys, they unlock and they start unwinding the DNA. And within that DNA is the trapped light that's in there, and also the trapped memories in there as well. So as you start releasing the light, some of the chain reactions of memories can come up from places that have been locked down in the being. So you do get definitely some
so it is possible you could end up in the fetal position, bawling your eyes out from time to time.
For sure. yeah, which is beautiful. Yeah.
There's a question from one of the people. I just wanted to pull it out because I think it is significant. Amanda, thanks. Can you ask him if there's any other way to do this without the exact time of birth? Because evidently she doesn't have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. The time of birth, it doesn't matter to start with, because the date of birth should give you your first 4 gene keys. The more hours that birth time is out, the more that the line variations, which are the dot numbers. So you might have the 10th gene key and then 0.1 or 0.6. There's 6 lines to the hexagram. So there's 64 gene keys and there's 6 lines to the hexagram. And the line numbers will start going out the more that the birth time's off. But it's really good to just get a start. So get a you could get a profile from 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. that day and just see what the differences are, because you're going to have a starting point with the gene keys, the main 4 gene keys, and from there you can intuit your way into it. So you can break it, you can crack it open, and then you can find your way. Okay. And also kinesiology is a good way. If you come across any tuned in kinesiologists, I've had a lot of people who have had success with being muscle tested, because the body knows what time it was born on the planet. Yeah. So that's one way of
far out. Yeah. So and one more time, just because I'm a little slow, and this is my 4th show today, so I'm a little bit.
That's all right.
But again, I don't know if we got this, but why are people citing the gene keys in a collective manner? Are we in, when we, as time occurs, are we, say planetary alignments or whatever the case is, are we in specific gene keys at certain times as a collective?
Yeah. We're we're going through transits called gates in the human design system, but they're based on these archetypes as well. And for example, so the sun just entered the 25th gate, which is the 25th gene key. So
okay, I got you.
And so the neutrinos from the sun for the next just under a week, because there's 384 gates and 365 days of the year. So there's like a gate a day in a way.
Yeah.
We just entered the 25th gate. And so the frequency bands of this archetype are on the planet for the next week, which are the 25th gene key is constriction, shadow of constriction, the gift of acceptance, and the siddhi of universal love. Okay. The interesting thing about it, I'll go into the last transit if you want, but it's a fascinating ride, because it really does show up both individually and collectively what we're actually navigating. Okay. And it can be really good to have a handle on that, because it's like, okay, when we can spot the shadow, like we just came out of the shadow of the gate of the 36th gate, which is the 36th gene key of turbulence, which is very apparent in the world right now. Turbulence, humanity, compassion are the 3 frequency bands. So we've just had a week in that, which is pretty obvious where it's.
Okay. And my friend Renata from Greece, I'm just going to repeat what she's asking, because I have no idea what it means. Can he talk about 2027 and the Sleeping Phoenix Cross? Does that make sense? Is that like gene key PhD level, or is that something we need to?
That's the 55th gene key, yeah.
Oh, I hear a lot about the 55th gene key, but go ahead and answer that.
There is a prophecy around it, around what's actually happening in the global change and putting things into perspective for 2027. It's all in the gene keys. It's all in that gene key. Like you can read and tune into that one.
I've heard. I've heard a lot about I can't tell you what it was, but I've heard people bring up the 55th gene key a lot, like more than any other one. I've heard that.
Well, the 55th gene key and the 22nd gene key, they're the big boppers of the transmission. So they're the 2 that underpin the whole synthesis. So the whole book, you read any other gene key, it takes 20-25 minutes to read, but you come to these 2 and they're holding very big transmissions. And for that are more collective, global in that way. Okay.
So her and I must have been on the same wavelength, because my next question was going to involve, is there any type of, you kind of answered this a little bit, but any type of prophecy or forecast in the gene keys?
Yes, but it's pretty broad. It's pretty broad, and I kind of resist speaking into it, because I don't really want to contaminate the transmission in a way, especially in a group setting.
Yeah, I know. I can appreciate that. And then again, I guess it could be a lot like astrology, as there is planetary movement. Doesn't mean X, Y, Z is going to happen. It just means these energies are prevalent or available, you know, that type of thing. And I
For
kind of get what you're
sure.
saying. Yeah, I kind
Yeah.
of get what you're saying too, because if there is any type of forecasting, people would tend to get caught up in that and miss the priority of working on themselves, you know. But
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting what we do as humans is we compartmentalize information. It's like if someone hears me talk about that and you know, that's my version of it, and it might be correct, it might not be, but then the mind kind of goes, oh yeah, that's that, and it tucks it away and kind of closes it for any other information that's around it, so it can be very limiting in that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now if I go and do this free assessment or
When
whatever it
you go.
is, then I would get the book,
Yeah.
and I would go to the 11 that apply to me, and just work through them. And when I'm done, start again. I wouldn't go into the other 53 gene keys.
Yep, you're asking some good questions because it's kind of covering all the bases. Just want to be very clear that there's no wrong way in. So people can get people get the book and they have it as kind of like an oracle, and they work with it in different ways. If you want to really bring it alive, it's just, you know, the quickest way in is the two of the prime gifts, which are the life's work and evolution, which there's 64 gene keys and 32 pairings. So there's keys that are coupled together to lock each other down, and they're designed to lock both the human and the collective into the shadow frequencies. But then when you have a breakthrough through one, you automatically raise the other, and the frequency and vibration go up in that way.
Okay. So you said each one of them has 3. So you've got the shadow, and then the siddhi on top, and what's in the middle?
Gift.
Okay. And okay. So I guess the idea is, or the reality is, that you start with the shadow and then kind of go into the next 2. Well, I guess the goal is to transform to the siddhi. What is a siddhi?
The cities are us living at our highest potential as human beings on the planet, which we're not quite there yet, obviously. But it's not I just want to be clear. It's not about, you know, we don't have to start in the shadow, but it's a good place to, you know, we're fluctuating between shadow, gift, siddhi sometimes, but shadows and gifts, and you know, the whole collective field is, you know, there's a mass shadow consciousness. So it's a nice way to go in to have a look while still being connected to the higher frequencies, because wherever there's a shadow, there's a pathway to the highest potential of that. So the 6th gene key, for example, is the shadow of conflict, the gift of diplomacy, and the siddhic frequency of peace. So obviously inner peace, peace in relationship, peace on earth, but then you've got conflict, inner conflict, outer conflict, global conflict, the reason why we have borders. But wherever there's conflict, there's the chance of peace. So so within that shadow, there's always the chance of the higher frequencies of that archetype.
And does the this is really interesting. I haven't read a book in 10 years. I might have to go pick it up. So like I know the gene keys are tied to date of birth, and I guess location as well. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does it have any kind of correlation to other things like chakras? I don't know, star systems. You know, is there any other type of connectivity there?
There is, and there are future sequences as well that are more global and more planetary that aren't, you know, aren't released, aren't fully grounded yet, and aren't needed to be grounded yet on the planet, because at this stage it's all about the individuals going on this very personal journey in a way to really unlock and activate their gifts in a grounded, embodied way, and to help spread that light to the planet.
Fascinating. Now, are you still partnered up with that guy that you were doing the seminars with in 2015?
No, we're still mates. He's still on the West Coast, and I spend a lot of my time overseas. So this is actually the longest time I've been back in Australia for the last 5 years.
Oh yeah.
But we stay in touch. We actually did a couple of events in Bali. I think it was a couple of years ago now, but I haven't seen him since. We obviously stay in touch because of the ambassador circle.
And so how does your work flow? I mean, you're flying to other parts of the world and you're doing conferences? Are they a week long? Are they a weekend? Are they a day? How does that work?
Normal events, they could be a 1-day activation day, but the ones that are the best juice and where the transmission really comes alive in is the 2 and 3 day Venus events, which is like the heart of the transmission, where you come together and to facilitate a group in that space is really powerful, because it's not really you facilitating anything. It's the transmission coming in and infiltrating the group and bringing everything to the surface. And it's a really juicy container, and I do love it. But they're no more than 3 days at the moment. That might be something that comes. We have talked about certain things with certain people, but
And
normally
excuse me. And do you do work online? Do you work with people one-on-one? Do you do any type of like Zoom conferences or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. Most of my work is done online over Zoom. I do readings and consultations of people's charts, and also I do coaching. Coaching which has a Gene Keys flavor to it, but it's also based on. I'm a big fan of coaching or mentoring people through whatever's present, and letting the presence and divine intelligence of that container produce what needs to be transcended and moved through. But the Gene Keys give it a really good, if you've got someone's Gene Keys chart, it's like, well, you're kind of in the frequency band, so you can kind of guide in that way. But there's an art form to it for sure.
Yeah, very cool. I like the way you do that, because you're like the conduit to the vortex being all the people that come to see you or in that event, and the consciousness just kind of takes over. I like that. I like that. Very cool. Anything that you want to convey in regard for right now, in regard to the Gene Keys, like you might want people to know about, or what's important that you haven't covered?
Oh, we've covered a lot of bases already.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, okay.
Well, it's like, I mean, we're like old friends. I don't know. Some people you just click with. I don't know how to explain it. For
sure, man. And the same was with Morgan. When Morgan reached out and messaged me, it's like, oh, I'm feeling her vibe. It's good to know you guys. Not really, just that there's no wrong way of doing it. Don't get overwhelmed with the chart when you download it, because it's a lot of numbers and words, but it's like every word is an invitation to get more acquainted with that word, because we can have our conditioned meaning of a word, but if something shows up in your hologenetic profile, it's like you really want to be looking into it, because it's either a gift or a higher frequency, a siddhi that you want to be aiming towards, or a shadow that probably hasn't had a lot of attention maybe in the individual's life. So and there's gifts in every shadow. So every breakthrough you have, it starts becoming addictive, because it's like, oh wow, like, oh boom, breakthrough, insight, and you start living with this wisdom, which is like living with the guru that's just dropping these bombs into your reality in a beautiful way. So there's no wrong way of doing it. And people, if they just want to download their chart on genekeys.com, profiles are there, and then grab a copy of the book. There's also audio tracks. So he's written the book, which is a big book, and he's also recorded his audio contemplation for each key. So you can read the book, put the audio contemplation on, and you're kind of getting traction with whatever genetic archetype you're choosing to penetrate or look deeper into at the time. And that's basically all you need to do to start with. And, if you want to have a consultation with myself or another ambassador of the wisdom, or there's the Golden Path program, which is like, it's the activation sequence is the first sequence, and that's online. So it's an online step-by-step thing. When people start, you can bring it alive, but then when you want to really start going deeper and really anchoring where it all fits, the activation sequence is also there. But I can send you the link, and anyone else the links to it all. So,
yeah, it'd be a good idea to, if you could go to my page after the show and put in whatever information you want, because more people, because we get suppressed a lot on these lives, so there'll be 3, 4, 5 times more replays than there will be the live. And they'll be looking for that. So if it's the links are in the comment, and write whatever you want, whatever explanations you want.
I'll put it on there.
Normally, if there's a lot of interest, which most of the time there is, you'll get inundated by messages from the Soulogy crowd, and a lot of people that come on pick up a lot of clients, and that's what it's all about. So very cool. So now, just on a personal level, so like we've made a pledge here not to talk about 2 things. We talked about it one day, and that was the last time. We're not going to talk about it. It's we're not talking about fear-based programming, and we're not talking about salvation-based programming. So that ought to just but in terms of what's happening, and I would have asked you this had none of this stuff been out there. Just curious, where do you think we're at as far as humanity goes, especially the fact that you're very familiar, it's your bailiwick, shadows, shadow work, but considering considering the shadow, the gift, the city, where do you think humanity's at? What do you think's gonna happen this year?
Ooh, that's a big question. I feel like at the moment, I feel like we're kind of in an enforced global pause at the moment, and if people are taking advantage of that the best that they can, it's a really good opportunity to slow down, because when we actually slow down and anchor and stop the pace that our lives go, that's when a lot of our stuff can come up. But a lot of our stuff can come up so we can review it and break through it and do all the things. As far as feeling into where this year is going, it's already only 3 months in, and it's already,
I know. Seems like 30 years.
It's like a fair old ride. So yeah, it's difficult. I don't really kind of look that far ahead.
Yeah.
So I go by the belief that the more present we are with, then the more acceptance we have with what's actually happening. We can actually, there's gifts in everything. There's gifts in, okay, you're in solitude. Okay, cool. Where's the gift in this? And sometimes that can be really, really difficult to establish. But I'm feeling positive about the times that we're in, even though there's a lot happening on the planet. There's
that's really more what I meant. Are you excited? Are you optimistic? Do you feel, a lot of people talk about a lot of things, the spaceships landing and, all kinds of stuff, but it really is a personal thing. I mean, it's and I would imagine that you've seen a lot of transformation in the work that you're doing when people face the shadows, discover the shadows, and then, as they say, the rest is history, the transformation that comes afterward. But you feel pretty good about where we're at.
Yeah, I just feel the potential of the empowerment that's possible in these times. It's a very challenging time for a lot of people. Obviously, there's a lot of people freaking out, but the chance of us really forging our inner stability and our inner fortitude so we can actually handle these waves and actually ride them with a bit of grace is also there as well, for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot better to be surfing on top of the wave than getting slammed on the bottom of it.
Getting pulled under,
yeah.
For sure.
Let go or be dragged. Yeah, that's my favorite exactly. Zen problem. Yeah. Well, it's an honor speaking to you and sharing space with you. I appreciate it, and I would love to collaborate with you in the future. If you come to the States, let me know. And when I finally get to Australia, I'll give you a call. But yeah, maybe in a few weeks or whatever. We're pretty maxed out right now. You have to carry me out on a stretcher before too long. But
did you say 1,800 shows deep?
Yeah, we'll be at 1,800 end of the month.
How many years did that take?
Really, we started in I want to say January 2018.
Wow.
So, but we had done. No, we started in the fall of 2017, and I know we did like the 400th show was done in I think June of 2018. So I figured it out. Well, I think we averaged because in the beginning we didn't do a lot, you know. We would do like one every 3 days or something, but we've averaged, I think, over 60 a month. So,
Wow.
you know, we're doing 5 today, and we've had days we've done 6 or 7, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
But
big
I enjoy
role,
it.
man. Well done.
Yeah,
It's a big role you're on. Well done. It's a
yeah,
big
it's
job.
well, I'm just the one that sits on the chair here. Morgan's the director. She's the producer. She puts these things together. I looked at the schedule today. I'm like, how do you do this? You know, like how do you line these people up? And the frequency just goes like, you know, it's like it's almost like what do you call it? Like a symphony. You
Yeah.
know, and even today, like today, I woke up and for the first time in a long time, I said, I don't know if I can go on today. I'm going to give it till 10:30, and if something doesn't change, I'm not. But each show that I did was very fulfilling, almost like I'm the client in a session, you know. So it's very fulfilling, and yeah. But I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that, and like I said, we'd love to collaborate with you again. You're a breath of fresh air, and now we've got somebody we can tap into on the Gene Keys. So
Yeah, for sure.
this is
And
all
if
about.
anyone's got any questions too,
Yeah.
feel free to email me through or message through whatever. I'm happy to answer
Where
questions.
yeah
queries.
yeah we'd love for you to put your links onto the messages, and yeah, absolutely yeah. Peace out.
Thanks, bud. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Best to you and yours. Safe travels, safe isolation as well.
You too, man. Take it easy. I'll talk soon.
All right, man.